ahead and start the recording. For those of you wondering if this recording or this session will be recorded or not, it absolutely will. And so we'll have this available to you in our Ask the Experts catalog. We're going to go ahead and begin our lesson today talking about smart groups to improve lead handling. And so we're talking about smart groups today, and I'm actually, the focus is on lead handling, but I do have a use case here for Information Manager as well for those of you who may be using that module. So we'll try to cover that as well here in the beginning of the lesson. So for today's discussion, it's just me here today. I'm Liz Colon. I'm a senior education consultant here with FranConnect. So we're going to be talking again about smart groups. As necessary in future lessons, we'll include other members of the team. Depending on what device you're using, whether that's a laptop or a mobile device, the little hand symbol will allow you to raise your hand to ask questions during the call today. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and or chat them to me. I'm happy to answer those questions as we go, if I can, or at the end of the presentation at the beginning here. So first we're going to talk about the topic of the week. So we'll spend the beginning of the session today talking about smart groups and some good use cases for those. And then we'll open up the floor for questions. So I can take any questions about any topic, about any module here at the end of the lesson. As always, if you have any questions that sort of occur or pop up in your mind during the week that you think, oh, I forgot to ask Liz this, you can absolutely at any time send us an email at training@franconnect.com. I very frequently receive questions during the week that I'm happy to answer and get back with you. Now our training calendar going forward has March 3rd talking about the heat meter. Now that's the session that we had to reschedule from last week. March 17th, so we're skipping March 10th. We've got some things going on here at FranConnect. So on March 17th, we're talking about going paperless with DocuSign integration. If this is something that you and your organization have been talking about for quite some time, we'll talk about how DocuSign can be used for franchise agreements and non-disclosure agreements and things like that to really streamline your process and make your organization paperless. March 24th, we'll be talking about the new mobile app. And so I'm sure that's a class you'll all want to go ahead and attend. We'll be talking about the mobile apps here available, and then of course the changes that have occurred as a result of the most recent Orion release. On March 31st, we're going to be talking about pro tips for Opener again. We covered this class in January and we've got a lot of great feedback on it, so we're going to go ahead and cover that one again on March 31st. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out of my PowerPoint now and enter the system where we'll begin talking about groups. So here under the sales module, we have groups. And like the recent changes to Campaign Center and workflows, we see a new UI, a new redesigned, sort of more user-friendly and easier on the eyes user interface. With that said, groups in definition do what you think they do. Groups allow you to collect leads based on criteria that you set. And so if you're thinking, man, I really wish that I could pull X data and send this group of leads a message or a campaign or something like that, you can absolutely do that here in the system. And there are two types of groups. So I'm going to go ahead and define those here for you initially, and then we'll talk about some use cases, especially for smart groups. So here we have the option to create a group, and you see the normal fields that you would normally see here in the system: name, description of the group, the accessibility. When I'm teaching this part of the lesson in my sales class, I typically talk about this accessibility in terms of risk to you as an organization. You have the ability to make groups public or private. Public being viewable by all other users of the sales module. Private being only available and viewable by you. Now, I do have organizations who have told me that there are so many groups that have been created that they have to make them private because the screen is inundated with groups. And I get that. But when we're talking about sales and we're talking about grouping people based on criteria, we always want to be sure, because we would hope that we would never have a salesperson intentionally group people together based on something that might violate equal opportunity. And so I always tell you, and my people who are in my sales class with me, to make these groups public. That allows you, the sales manager, director, corporate administrator, to have oversight into the groups that have been created by your sales team. And you want that oversight because we never want to, unintentionally group people together based on something that might be inappropriate. And so we want to go ahead and make these public. That's my recommendation. Of course, as an organization, if you end up with 150 groups, that's too much, and you may want to make them private, just based on how you operate your system. Now, down below here, we have the option to make this a smart group. So let's talk about the difference in groups. If we don't select this button, this group is simply what we call a regular group. A regular group allows you to name, essentially fill out this form, click create, and then you can manually add leads to the group. Okay, so basic functionality here. We name it and we assign leads to the group based on search criteria that we determine, and I'll show you this in a moment. And then we also have smart groups. Smart groups allow us to have the system automatically pull people into the group based on criteria we set to include future leads who come into the system who meet that criteria. So a smart group says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull all leads that meet X data, and then when a lead comes in tomorrow that meets X data, I'm going to go ahead and pull them into this group as well. So let's talk about some common use cases for groups. And these are use cases that have been given to me by franchisors as we've been, talking about this lesson during my sales courses. So one option or one use case that you might find is emailing leads who meet a certain status for something like a founder's call. So we see here that we've got a founder's call group created. This group is created based on leads who meet certain status, which means that I have told the system that leads who meet a certain status will be invited to this founder's call. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click modify criteria here, and we can see that leads who are in these 6 statuses are placed into the founders call group, and then I can market them in the campaigns section. Okay, and I'll show you that in a minute as well. And so this is a common use case that I've found, is that we want to take all leads who are up to a certain point in our sales process, and we want to go ahead and invite them to an event, invite them to a founder's call, invite them to maybe a Periscope, a day in the life type, or a Facebook Live where we kind of walk through what it means to be a franchise owner from the franchisee perspective. And there may be all kinds of really great marketing tools that you can use here. And of course, these are the statuses that these leads will meet in order to be a part of that invitation. Okay, so that's one use case. And don't worry, I'm going to show you how to set this up here in just a moment. I just want to talk about, like, why would we use groups? And so these use cases help to define that why. Next up might be something like emailing leads who have completed the FDD in the last 30 days. And so we might say leads who have completed the FDD in the last 30 days, we need to connect with an invite to Discovery Day. Okay, maybe that's the next step in our process. We can also tell the system leads who have been sent the FDD, but not necessarily that they've signed it. So we've got the option to do sent, or we've got the option to do completed the FDD, right? And so if it's leads who have been sent the FDD, maybe they haven't completed it, and maybe we're simply sending a reminder to let them know that they need to complete the FDD. Okay, and so those are a couple of common use cases. Another one might be that we currently as an organization don't have a veterans program, but we're a pro-veterans organization. We really want to implement one. We think it's a great way to give back to those who have served our country, and so we decide that we're going to go ahead and implement a veterans program. Now I can come in here and I can create a group, and I can name this my veterans group and give it a description. We can, of course, continue to make this public, and we can choose whether or not we want to assign these leads manually, or we want the system to assign them for us to include future leads who come into the system. I'm going to go ahead and select this option today to show you what this looks like. So I'll go ahead and click Create, at which point I'll be prompted to complete or select the criteria that I'd like these leads to meet. And so in this particular case, rather than scrolling through the entire list of possible fields I can search by, I'm going to go ahead and type in veteran, and I'm going to get the option for veteran that we've gone ahead and created here in the system in the form generator. And I'm going to select veteran, and then I'm going to say when the veteran field is selected, and specifically that they are a veteran, that the answer is yes, is when I want them to be grouped. And so I'll go ahead and click Save here. It'll confirm I want to set up this criteria. And then I've got my confirmation page. But one of the things I want you to notice here on the confirmation page down here is that there are currently 13 leads in my sales database who meet this criteria. Okay, and so these are going to be leads that haven't been closed or sold at this point. These are going to be active leads who meet this criteria. Now, perhaps I've already reached out to these people because once we knew that the veteran group or that the veteran program was coming, we immediately started emailing these people individually from a sales owner perspective. We just told the sales guys, hey, if you've got a veteran, we're rolling out this program, just reach out to them individually. So maybe I don't particularly want to market this group right now. Maybe I just want to market future leads, at which point I can uncheck this box, and these 13 leads will not go into the group, but rather only future leads who meet this criteria will go into the group. Okay, so we have the ability to tell the system, hey, these older leads, they kind of we don't want them in this group right now. We just want the future guys coming in. Okay, for today's purposes, because we're implementing a veterans program, we've got 13 active leads who are interested or meet the criteria for this program. We're going to go ahead and make sure that this box is checked and click Save. Now I've got my 13 leads in the veterans group. If a lead comes in tomorrow who meets the criteria where we've selected the check mark that they're a veteran, then they will automatically end up in this group. To ensure that these leads receive the campaign that we're going to go ahead and send out informing them about our new veterans group, we'll select the little action button over here on the right hand side, and we can select Associate with Campaign, at which point we're taken into our campaign center and we can choose which campaign we want them to receive. If any of you were on my call a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the Campaign Center, recall that when we create a new campaign as well, that we have the option to choose our audience, and that audience can be a group. Backing up a step, let's take a look at what it means to create a regular group. So if we're creating a regular group, we can name this We'll go ahead and create a group here, and when I click create, you'll notice that it simply creates the group on the page and it doesn't actually take any additional actions. The number of leads listed here is 0. I'll have to come over here along the right-hand side and select Associate with Leads in order to go ahead and make the selection that I want to make. Okay? And in this particular case, I'm looking for leads that are in the application phase, and so we might do application received here. And I can go ahead and search for those leads that match that criteria. In this particular case, I don't have any training environment, so we typically don't move past the new lead or initial contact made phase. But nevertheless, you can see here that we can go ahead and assign leads based on whatever criteria that we set, but this group is going to be static, okay? Which means that unless you physically come in here and make a change to the group will not change. Okay, and so we're going to see with Smart Group that this group is ever evolving. Okay, so as more leads meet the criteria, they will fall into this group, and leads will continue to be added to this group unless we opt to modify the criteria or delete the group, archive the group, whatever. Okay. Now you'll notice here you have the option to remove leads from a group. One of the things that we have on the pipeline going forward is the ability for groups to be evolving in that leads both come and go based on criteria. So they would fall into the group based on meeting the criteria, and they would automatically be removed from the group if they no longer meet the criteria. We're expecting that in one of the next 2 releases. And so right now, in order to remove a lead from the group, that is a manual process. So in this veterans group, if one of these 13 leads we've sold a franchise to, we'll want to come in here and remove them from the group if we continue to campaign these leads on a regular basis. So now I'd like to go ahead and present a use case in Information Manager. Now, even though this was based on sales, I want to go ahead and simply show that in Information Manager, we haven't made the edits to the UI just yet. That's coming in one of the next releases as well. So we're still looking at the old UI for groups. But they work and operate the same way, just with a couple of different button clicks. In this particular area, let's talk about why we create a group in Information Manager. One of the best use cases that I've heard and that is totally relevant to your organization is that we know that frequently legislation is passed in certain states like California and Washington that can be very anti-franchise. Okay, and those decisions and those bills that pass in those states, we need our franchisees to be aware of so that if it's impacting them and their business and the way they pay their employees or so on, they are aware and can make the necessary changes. So we may decide that we create a smart group to include all franchisees who are presently in California, and we create a California legislation group. We'll name the group, give it a description. Again, we're going to take the same approach here where we make these public. And we're going to go ahead and create a smart group because as more leads come into the system and those leads are awarded franchises, if they are building their franchise location in California, we want the system to automatically pull them into this legislation group so that as bills get passed that could potentially impact the locations, we can go ahead and notify them. And so you'll see here that rather than that fancy little button, we have a checkbox that says include all existing and future franchisees which match this group. We'll go ahead and click Add and Set Criteria. And we'll go ahead and select from our store info And we're specifically looking for, first, the country, because whenever we're doing anything with state, whenever we're doing anything with state, we want to go ahead and do our country. And so that'll be the United States. And we'll want to also do our state itself. At which point we'll click OK and create our smart group and confirm that that's what we want to do. Smart group will be added successfully, and now we'll see here that we have 15 franchisees in the state of California who are now members of our California legislation group. Because Information Manager works like sales in that we can associate campaigns. As new legislation comes out, we may associate it with a campaign, and we can go ahead then and automatically push out some messaging related to this legislation to our franchisees so that we know that they are aware of these changes that are coming that are going to impact their business and potentially us as a franchisor as well. So those are the use cases and the presentation that I have here today for groups. The lines are officially open for questions, so feel free to go ahead and chat them to me or raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and answer any questions you have. Does anyone have a use case they'd like to go ahead and present and sort of talk to me about? Oh, hey, Patrick. All right, I've got a question on the line. Smart groups just pull in information, but when would you choose a regular group? Ryan, I think with the sort of invention of smart groups, the regular group option kind of goes by the wayside. You know, I can't think of a good use case where you would say, I just want to create a group of historic leads and not include anybody as a future lead, unless you're doing something that's specific to just those leads in the past. So I just sort of thought of a use case. Let's say you were marketing dead leads. You might pull those dead leads into a group. So all leads who, so let's go back into sales. And this is a totally relevant use case because I've had multiple franchisors tell me that, you know, if they've got a couple of slow months where they don't have a lot of pickup in, you know, sort of sales, that they'll reach back out to leads that are dead. And so we might go ahead and create a group that says, hey, it's July of this year, it's our slow season, we're going to go ahead and just market to those leads who we've lost for some reason. And of course, we're not going to market to those leads that are failed background check or don't have enough money, but we might market to those people who you know, just didn't call us back. That might be a good place to kind of re-engage, or they said, you know, we're going to push this decision off for 6 months because we've got a change in our family status. And so that might be a reason why you would choose a regular group. We don't necessarily want future leads that will be receiving this particular campaign that we're sending out right now in July. Okay, let's see. So I don't really, I'm reading a question. Denise, can you automatically create a group from a contact form identifier? Landing page collects contact for, say, Timbuktu via a form that populates in a Friend Connect. Can you populate right in a smart group? Yes. So anytime you create a smart group, the criteria, let me go here and we'll just go ahead and select modify criteria. You have the ability to choose any of the available fields in any of the tabs of the record. So if it's state-based, you can do that. If it's compliance-based, based on the date of the FDD, the date the FDD was received, you pretty much have free reign to select whatever criteria you want to in order to achieve, automatically grouping people as they come into the system. Good question. So Patrick, so for a basic email blast, would the process be create an email template, then create a group, then add leads via the search function, then associate the template with the campaign? It depends on what you're trying to achieve. So one of the new functionalities of workflows is that we can actually, let me jump there. We can actually do some of the grouping right in workflows. So I think it depends. If we're wanting to group people specifically like veterans or like the use case in Information Manager where we're grouping franchisees for legislation, then I think the group makes the most sense. But we remember in workflows that we have the ability now we have the ability now to create event-based triggers. So when something changes on the record, but more importantly, when we make that selection, we have the ability to say all leads or leads matching a condition. So I think you just have to determine what's the best place. So if we're looking at veterans who are presently in the system, probably the best way to do it is group. If we're looking at leads coming into the system where we may want to execute a workflow, then we can go ahead and say leads who come into the system who specifically meet the veteran criteria get this particular campaign or a task is assigned to their lead owner. They get, we can execute the workflow. So I think it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. I know Kelly's got some input this. Denise, you're thinking marketing source. Yes, so we can do source. Okay, what about all leads within a single state excluding certain lead status? Let's take a look, Patrick. Leads within a single state. Excluding, so let's see, leads who states so under primary info we can do state, and I always forget that I have to do country first, so let me do that. And status. So let's get rid of our veteran one here. So if the country is the US, Patrick, and this is, I'm in workflow, but we can do the same thing with groups. What about all leads within a single state excluding certain statuses? Okay, single state. So we'll say California for the sake of our example here. Not in, and we can choose that status, new lead status. So we can tell the system that we want either the workflow to execute or the group to collect people who are in the USA, California, and who are not in the new lead status. So every other lead status would pull into this group. Okay. Kelly, why don't I unmute you since I think what you're presenting is a use case.
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead.
I was just saying that the use of the regular groups that we do, the smart groups require a least common denominator,
Mm-hmm.
and for certain instances that doesn't apply. There isn't a field to collect the data, or it's subjective to how the individual uses the system.
Okay.
So for one example that comes to mind is a salesperson in the CRM, not in the sales module, um, likes to plan out a weekly route. And so Monday she's going to go here, Tuesday she's going to go here, etc. And and so she will put the contacts in that group after she maps out where they are in relation to each other, and then maintains that route. And then she'll come back at the end of the day and log her visits, log her communications, send the emails out via the people that she's communicating with on that day. So it's very subjective to her. There's no field I can put in there for her to collect that information via a smart group.
Right. Right. Okay, perfect. That's a really good example. Thanks so much, Kelly. Okay. Um, Patrick, is it easier or prefer to do it in workflow or a group? I don't know the answer to that. I think it really just depends on what you're trying to achieve. Um, and I hate to kind of give that answer because I know it stinks, but um, workflows will allow us to take multiple actions. So remember, after I move past this point, I can choose an action, and it can be one of four of these things, but it can also be more than one of, it can be one of four or it can be more than one of four. So if what I want to do is to send a campaign, then it makes perfect sense for me to go ahead and potentially use this. If I want to do more than one thing, then it allows you to do more than one thing. Now, groups, as Kelly is pointing out, allow us to have more control over what we do with that person. There's where workflows is going to have automation, thanks Kelly, where workflows is going to have automation, groups is when we want to say, okay, well, we're putting this group of people together, but we're not exactly sure all of the things that we might want to do with them right now. So maybe we're going to send them a campaign, maybe we're going to do something different, or in the case where she used with CRM, we're grouping people together, but it's really for our own specific purposes. And so I think it just depends on what you're trying to achieve in the creation of the group or the workflow. Okay, did I get everyone? Ryan, the question is, when will the rest of the Friend Connect UI look similar to the Campaign Manager? I'm not absolutely sure. I know that it's on the roadmap for it to have this sort of similar, streamlined, more modern UI, but I don't know an exact timeline for you on that. I can certainly find out where it is on the roadmap and get back to you with that one. Just looking at other questions we've got. Okay, Denise, let me come back to what you were talking about here. Marketing source code. So let's go back and take a look at groups and take a look at marketing source code. Let's modify the criteria here and take a look. Okay, we've got marketing code here, so we can absolutely group people by marketing code. And of course, here in our training environment, we only have a couple of different examples here, but of course, we can group them by marketing code. Joseph, typically what happens after the recording is that we publish it on GoToTraining and an email is sent to you the following morning with a copy of the recording. If you don't happen to get it, feel free to email us at training@franconnect.com. And then also our marketing team will also, typically within an invitation to the next session, they also push out last week's recording. So of course you can get a copy by any of those ways. Denise, glad to hear that you like it. Yeah, so Patrick, can we set up something for new leads that come in, let's say, with countries that we are not developing in, and assign multiple task trigger steps, such as 1, email reply, 2, change status, 3, changing lead owner? We can set up an email reply that would be in the form of a campaign. We can change the status. Right now in workflows, we can't change the lead owner. We also have the option to do this, Patrick, in another area of the system under admin. Under configuration, I'm sorry, let me go back. Under sales, we have define unregistered states. And if I come in here, I can choose from all of the countries in the world as long as those countries have been defined in configuration. And then I can choose what areas of those countries. In this particular case, it's the USA and certain states. And then down here, I've already got it set up to where they have, they receive the unregistered state campaign, and their status is marked as no territory available. So we do have a sort of separate area that's specific for unregistered states. So the next question is, what if it's specific to a city? In this particular case, it does not get as granular as a city. Denise, we have the Ask the Experts library that I could send you in an email. So I'll make sure I put that in as a follow-up. What other questions do you have for me? These are all great. Okay, Ryan, use case. We have sales inquiries asking about smaller market cities that we are not currently interested in opening locations. Can we set up a campaign to respond? Is there a way that you are identifying the smaller market cities inside the system, like a field that you may be using? I think the only way for us to be able to sort of initiate a campaign is if we tell the system to initiate that campaign based on a field being answered, right? So if Bob's calling in and says, hey, I'm interested in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and you're like, well, thanks so much, but Fredericksburg's not really on our roadmap because it's just too small, it's not a big enough population, then unless we input Fredericksburg, Virginia somewhere, or unless we put in a field somewhere to tell the system to send a campaign, I'm trying to think. There's no way to initiate that campaign unless we do it manually. And Kelly's saying dependent fields. Yeah. But I think in this particular case, like there is in sales, there's location preference here in primary info, but I don't know if it goes as far as us being able to say like here in preferred locations, as far as us saying no, we're not interested. Um, and Ryan, let me back up a second because there may be a different solution. Okay, a sales increase asking about smaller market cities. Brian, let me explore this one a little bit offline, um, and let me kind of think through it because I feel like there's a way, but you just would never know what city is coming in. And so that's the part, yeah, exactly. And so that's the part that's like a little, different here is that you just never know what city is coming in. If it's Fredericksburg, there's no way for you to like input Fredericksburg somewhere. Now you can certainly create a campaign that you deploy when the inquiry comes in that is not in a city um, that you service. So for example, um, you have the option under any record to go ahead and modify the campaign they're receiving. So if they come in as a new lead and they happen to input that their preferred location is Fredericksburg, Virginia, and you're like, population's not big enough, thanks but no thanks, you can always come in here under campaigns and of course this is a manual thing and select the thanks but no thanks campaign. Or thanks, we are interested in opening in Virginia, but not necessarily Fredericksburg. We'd rather be in, Northern Virginia, Alexandria, somewhere that's got a larger population. So there is a way for you to change the campaign. It would just be a more manual option once you see that they're interested in one of those smaller locations. I'm glad that that's a good response for right now. So good deal. Any other questions? Oh, Kelly, you have a question. Okay, regarding workflows. Let me unmute you. Go ahead, Cal.
I was just looking at the workflows that you could do, and the triggers. There are certain ones that you can pick based on like a status, a change, or a communication being logged. In FIM, there are triggers. In FIM, you can set triggers on almost every field
Right.
in the system. So will they be adding more selections to that choice for building a workflow, or making it so that you can pick? Because I was thinking in terms of Ryan's question there, if you could say if this field becomes this value, then this is the response.
Right. As far as I know, we do intend to continue developing workflows. So if there's an opportunity for us to present a use case to the development team that makes sense, like Ryan's, for example, where we're saying, if it doesn't meet this criteria, maybe it's just cities we are interested in, I don't know, that we want to go ahead and execute something. And so, yes, this will continue to evolve and develop as we, have more and more releases out there. Good question, Kelly. Any other questions? I don't see any coming across the line. So if there are no more questions, it's been a pleasure having you all on the line today. I think this is a really great lesson and a lot of great input from the audience and a lot of great questions. I've got a couple of things I'll follow up with you on, but a couple of my folks here on the call. But other than that, you have a great day. Enjoy this beautiful weather if you're on the East Coast, and we'll talk to you next week.